What's up, everybody? It's James from Lucrative MMA. I'm back to drop some more knowledge on you. And today I'm going to be doing the 9th edition of the Lucrative MMA Betting Podcast. We've got an absolutely huge card this weekend, a huge main card. Some of the prelim fights are going to be bangers as well. It's UFC 262. We're finally crowning a new lightweight champion after Khabib has officially retired. I don't know when that Khabib and Gaethje fight was, but it was a long, long time ago. And it's only right that the division now moves on. It seems a little bit strange that the division isn't moving on with Justin Gaethje or Dustin Poirier. But obviously we know Poirier had the fight with McGregor, took the rematch, as he should have done. You know, he deserves to get paid. And I don't really know what's happening with Gaethje. A bit of a sad situation there. He's sat out. But at the end of the day, Charles Oliveira is as deserving as anybody else for that title shot. 8-fight win streak. He didn't fight Khabib, didn't get beat by Khabib, the last champion, like Gaethje and Poirier. So I can't wait to see him fight for the strap. And then obviously Michael Chandler. That's a little bit of a question as to whether he deserves to fight for the title after one fight. But at the end of the day, Dana White is right when he says that it really is all about timing in this game. And he just came over at the perfect time, knocked out Dan Hooker on a card that was headlined by Poirier and McGregor. You know, he kind of stole the show, not from Poirier, but he kind of stole the show, obviously, in the co-main event. So, yeah, man, I can't wait to see the fight. It's an absolute banger of a fight. And, of course, I will get into that fight because if you don't know, what I do on this podcast is it's a betting podcast, right? So I like making money from MMA even more than I like watching MMA. And I love watching MMA, so that's hard to say, right? But what I do on this podcast is I talk about the main event from a betting perspective. I talk about the most exciting fight on the card from a betting perspective. And I also talk about the most inaccurate betting line on the card. So they're the 3 segments I do on this weekly podcast. Sorry, it's out a little bit late this week. I did want to get it out earlier. But as you guys know, I have a handicapping service and that is my main job. This, being a podcaster isn't my main job. So I've really been taping fights for next week. I've been researching fights up until today. And I've been putting out some other content on the website and stuff like that. So making some content for the website. So sorry, it's not out super early, earlier than it usually is, but I'm here. I'm here now. And we're going to get straight into it. Just a quick update for any of you who are not signed up to my handicapping service. I am now on a 11 weekend winning streak. I've only lost 1 out of the last 11 weekends and I lost 0.1 units. So it's a break even weekend. If any of you did want to sign up and make real money from betting on MMA, you can go to the links in the bio or you can go to lucrativemmabetting.com where you can check out all my results there. I'm third party tracked on betmma.tips, an independently verified tracking website. So I cannot fake my record. I won 60 units last year. We won 99 units the year before. We're on track to win about 85 units this year. So, yeah, if you guys want to sign up, you can make money from betting on sports. And if you follow me, you'll make a lot of money from betting on sports. But that's it. Let's get straight into the card. So if any of you are in the chat watching live, you can always hit me up in the chat. I'll try and respond to you as quick as possible. And we're going to talk about the most exciting fight. Now, as I always say, right, this is probably one of the to be honest, it's always hard picking the most exciting fight on the card, right? Because there's lots of exciting fights on the card, especially pay-per-views. UFC usually stack pay-per-views. We've got Charles Oliveira Chandler. I mean, that's probably the most exciting fight, right? But because I'm talking about that anyway, because I talk about the main event, I can't include that, right? Then we got Dariush versus Ferguson. What a great fight that is. I'm just looking at the card now. We got Muniz versus Jacare, which should be a good card. Venata versus Grundy. That's a low-key banger. Jamie Pickett versus Jordan Wright. That's probably going to end early, maybe. But for the most exciting fight on the card, I've decided to go with Gina Mazzani versus Priscilla. No. I'm only joking. I couldn't even keep a straight face to finish that. Okay, I'm not going with that fight. Though I think that fight has potential to be a decent fight because Priscilla's a zombie, right? Anyway, the fight I am going for, which isn't, it's probably not a surprise, right? Sometimes I like to choose fights that are a little bit under the radar. This one's not under the radar, but I just can't ignore it. I'm sorry. The fight I'm going for is Shane Burgos versus Edson Barbosa. What a fucking fight. You know, that fight is going to be, it's going to be the most exciting fight on the card, right? You know, I think that and the main event are definitely going to be battling it out for what the most exciting fight is going to be. Shane Burgos is never in a boring fight. Edson Barbosa is never in a boring fight. Edson Barbosa would probably like to be in a boring fight a lot of the time, right? Because he kind of likes to keep distance, tee off at his opponents. But Shane Burgos loves the war. You know, he loves getting hit. Not the same for Edson, but because of Edson's style, it just always ends up being an absolute great fight. His last fight against Makwan Emakani wasn't, you know, super exciting, but that's more because of the opponent he fought, in my opinion. Before that, he fought Dan Ige in an absolutely great fight. You know, Edson's been in wars. He's been in a war against Tony Ferguson, who's on this card. He's fought some high level competition. And Shane Burgos is now that high level competition, right? Shane Burgos kind of was on the fringe for a while. We still don't really know how good he is. He obviously got knocked out by Calvin Kattar. He got defeated by Josh Emmett last time out. So I feel like we don't really know how good Shane Burgos is, but he's obviously a very good fighter. And if he can go out there and beat Edson Barbosa this weekend, he'll really stamp himself on a division in a top 5, you know, top 10 of that featherweight division. He's already top 10, but definitely that top 5, you know, he'll be creeping in. So yeah, man. So if we look at the odds at the moment, Shane Burgos is a minus 150 favorite. And then you can get Edson Barbosa for plus 125. Now, I'll just come out and say it straight away that it's a little bit intriguing that you can get Edson Barbosa for plus 125 because I think this is a very close fight. You know, I don't think anyone's going to run away with it. I know Shane Burgos is not just the favorite on the bookies, but seems to be the favorite in the MMA community, right? Everybody is betting Shane Burgos. I don't know if I've seen anybody betting Edson Barbosa. And if any of you have bet Edson Barbosa, let me know in the chat because I do think it's a close fight. And depending on what odds you get, I can see at the moment, I'm just looking on best fight odds right now, right? And I can see at the moment, I don't know if this is correct because best fight odds is not always correct. It's not always up to date. But it says that you can get Edson Barbosa for plus 140 and 5 dimes. I do have access to 5 dimes. I'm going to have a look at that as soon as I get off the podcast. If it's plus 140, I'm pulling the trigger. You know, personally, I won't tip that line unless it's widely available. You know, I never send bets out to my members that are not widely available, you know, on at least 6 or 7 books. If it's only at 5 dimes and a couple of other books, I probably won't tip it. I always tip the most average line, right? That's why I said plus 125. But I can see he's creeping up now, and I might even wait a little bit because money keeps on coming in on Shane Burgos. And if Shane Burgos gets to like minus 160, minus 175, and you give me Edson plus 150, I mean, I'm jumping on it all day. I feel like this is a 50-50 fight, guys. So it's not great for a prediction sense, you know, if you guys wanted a prediction, because if I'm saying the fight's 50-50, it basically means I don't have a prediction. If I thought one fighter is going to win 51% of the time, well, there's my prediction. But because it's 50-50, I don't really have a prediction. I will obviously give you guys a prediction like I always do. But, you know, just talking about Edson Barbosa a little bit, this guy does the same thing every fight, right? He always comes to bang. Now, there's a couple of times where he's been, you know, dominated. Kevin Lee, even though he hurt Kevin Lee bad in that fight. Khabib, Justin Gaethje knocked him out early. But most of the time, he puts up a very, very good fight, whether he wins or loses. You know, he lost that Ige fight, split decision. I believe he should have won that fight. I believe it was fairly clear he won that fight. It was definitely close, but Edson did the more damage, so I think he deserved to win that fight. He also lost the split against Paul Felder, which was dubious. He definitely could have won that fight. You know, so he always comes to bang, and he always puts on a good show unless he gets blown out completely, right? It's never like someone's pretty dominant against him. Not really, right? He's usually winning the fight, or it's a close fight, or he completely gets taken out, right? Gaethje, Khabib, all of that. So he's dropping down in weight. You know, he's probably had about 3 or 4 fights at this weight class now. I think this might be his third. So he dropped down against Ige. Was that the first fight he dropped down for? I believe it was. After the Felder fight, he dropped down and fought Dan Ige at 145 pounds. And then his next fight was against Makwan Amakani, 145 pounds. And now he's in, he's 145 pounds against Shane Burgos. So he's had some time to get used to the weight, and he seems pretty good at the weight. I thought that dropping down in weight might leave him to be less durable. He took some hellacious punches from Dan Ige, so he looks to be pretty decently durable still. Obviously, he can get knocked out. Someone like Shane Burgos could touch that button. We've seen it happen a couple of times before. So, well, at least definitely against Gaethje. And Shane Burgos has somewhat of similar attributes to Gaethje in the fact that he likes to fight in the close pockets. He likes to create damage, as Justin Trevor would say. And he likes to, predominantly use his boxing to put the beating on his opponent, right? They're definitely different styles, but the fact that Shane Burgos will come forward, will try and crash the pocket and hit Edson at close range is a good style to fight Edson Barbosa, in my opinion. You can't give him distance. We see when he's been beat, right? And I'm not talking about the split decisions by Paul Felder and Dan Ige, right? Even Dan Ige crowded him a lot. But I'm talking about when he's been dominantly beat, right? Against Kevin Lee, Justin Gaethje, and Kevin Lee, Justin Gaethje, and Khabib Nurmagomedov. Right, he got choked out by Tony Ferguson. He's also got some other losses. But let me just talk about them three right now. Even the Tony Ferguson one. Let's talk about the Tony Ferguson because he got stopped. In all of them fights, he got crowded, right? The opponent put a lot of pressure on him. Now, in two of them fights, Kevin Lee and Khabib, they was just spamming takedowns, right? But at the end of the day, they was still in his face. Tony was in his face, and he managed to make him wilt, right? Who's the other guy I said? I got losing my memory now, guys. But, it was Justin Gaethje. So they all crowded him, right? So Edson doesn't fight particularly well when he's getting crowded. Shane Burgos will definitely crowd him. So Shane Burgos got a good style to beat him. But Edson Barbosa's kind of got a good style to beat Shane Burgos as well. I mean, he's going to be hitting him hard to the body. He has them amazing spinning back kicks. He has them amazing spinning wheel kicks to the head. Also, he doesn't throw as many leg kicks as I thought he would have. I felt in my mind he threw loads of leg kicks all the time. Then when I watched tape, he didn't. I mean, he throws leg kicks, but he didn't spam it as much as I thought. I think he needs to spam leg kicks in this fight. Shane Burgos is completely open for the leg kick. We've seen it time and time again in his career. Even in the fights that he's won, he's been hurt to the leg. So I think that's going to be open. And the spinning back kick to the body could be very brutal when Shane is just walking him down, which we know he will do. I think the spinning back kick to the body can be very, very brutal for Edson Barbosa here. So look, man, it's a close fight. As I said, 50-50. I feel like Shane Burgos round 3 isn't a bad stab because, just because he might finally catch up to Edson Barbosa. His pressure might break Edson. Look, he could break him earlier than that. But, I always like them round 3 stabs. I've hit a couple this year. I've hit Islam Makhachev in round 3, Grant Dawson in round 3. Bruno Silva had him in round 3, knocked him out in round 2. So, I've been close as well on a couple of them round 3 props. So I always like to look at the round 3 ones. Shout out to my man Clint from the Die Hard MMA podcast. I know he loves his round 3 sprinkles as well. So if you just look at best fight odds now, right? Shane Burgos to win in round 3 plus 1,400 best price. I might have gotten in on that a while back. Don't tell anyone, but I might have done that. And then we've got, plus 1,100, plus 1,200. So yeah, that could be a play, but obviously unlikely to hit them plays, them round 3 plays. But when they do come in, you're definitely celebrating for that night. So, yeah, I feel like Shane Burgos is going to need to fight a bit smarter than he has done in previous fights. Do I think he's going to do that? No. Do I think he needs to? Yeah. I just don't feel like Shane Burgos is going to be able to stop the body shots from Edson Barbosa. But then on the other hand, I don't really feel Edson Barbosa is going to be able to consistently stop Shane Burgos getting into range. So that's why it's a hard fight to call, guys. Anybody who says they're confident on this fight, I don't really understand it, to be honest. I understand the fact that you think Shane Burgos has a good archetype to beat Edson Barbosa in the fact that, I've already spoke about it. He's a good boxer. He crowds range. He's very tough, so he won't wilt as soon as he gets shot. But I just don't feel like just because he's got a good archetype to win, you can be supremely confident on him to win, right? Edson Barbosa has fought at a much higher level of competition. When Shane Burgos has getting that step up, I mean, he lost, he lost against Calvin Kattar. I don't know if you want to call Josh Emmett a step up. I guess you have to these days. But that was a weird fight, because Josh Emmett just has that equalizer, which won him the fight, right? Just the power. Shane Burgos got wins. Cub Swanson, it was a split decision. So he isn't proven at that level, whereas Edson Barbosa is. Another thing you have to take into account, and I'll wrap up on this fight very shortly, but the last thing I want to mention is that Shane Burgos is kind of like in an upswing, right, in his career. I don't know the ages of the guys, but Edson Barbosa, he's probably in a downswing. I don't think he's the best we've ever seen him, right? He looked very good against Ige, lost that fight. Looked good against Amir Khani, I guess, but he's definitely not in his prime, in my opinion. Doesn't mean he can't beat Shane Burgos, right? He can beat anyone. He's very brutal. He's a brutal fighter. So I'm going to give my final prediction on this fight. And because it's a 50-50 fight, I'm going to have to go with a dog, right? So I feel like Edson Barbosa at plus 140 is a very good bet, a very good bet. Whether he gets knocked out in round 3, like I've already bet on, or not, I just feel like that the line shouldn't be that wide, Shane isn't proven at that level, right? I understand the stylistics favor Shane, but the level of competition doesn't, right? And you do have that kind of evens it out a little bit to make it a 50-50 fight, in my opinion. Shane Burgos could go out there and knock him out. I also think Edson Barbosa could knock Shane out. I also think Edson Barbosa could win a decision. So I'm going to go with Edson Barbosa because he's the dog. And I'm going to have my eye on that line a lot today because it's Saturday for me here. And if that line gets any wider, I'm probably going to take a shot on Edson Barbosa. And in fact, I might even take a shot on him, depending on what line I can get him out when I get off the podcast. So that's it. I'm predicting Edson Barbosa to win, let's say, via second round stoppage. Spinning back kick to the body. He can't continue, even though Shane wants to. So I'm going to move on to the next segment, which is the most inaccurate betting line on the card. But I'll just catch up with the chat quickly. And we got like almost 20 people in here at the moment, so I appreciate that. It's one of the most I've ever had. Shout out to Pillow Fist. This card should be a blast for sure. What's up, everyone? Yeah, this fight's going to be an absolute banger. Hunter M is saying he's got Shane by decision or Edson by finish. Interesting. To be honest, I could see that flipped. Edson by decision or Shane by finish, really. I can kind of see this fight going multiple ways. Parky, we are the people. WATP is saying he quite liked the under for the Burgos and Barbosa. Let's check the price on the under 2.5 rounds for Edson Barbosa versus Shane Burgos. So the under 2.5 is currently sitting at plus 155. Yeah, man. I mean, it's going to be an absolute banger. That's pretty decent, That is a pretty decent shot, to be honest. But, they're tough. They're both very tough guys, and they usually do go to decision. They're actually decision fighters, which you wouldn't really expect, right? But just look at their record. They are actually decision fighters. So, it's always dodgy betting on that, but plus 155, good price. Barbosa is now plus 140 in places. That's a good bet as well, in my opinion. Sumi K is saying he thinks the fight goes to the distance. He has a unit on the over 1.5 rounds. Yeah, that's minus 350. You bet that for a unit? Fair enough, bro. Dimitri Sped is saying Barbosa decision is plus 220 is a nice line. Yeah, I agree. I see lots of nice lines, Like, it's hard to predict this fight. That's why I'm calling it, what's it called? A 50-50. So, yeah. All right. I'm going to change fight to cover. All right, I'm gonna go over the most inaccurate betting line on the card now. So this one is always a very, very hard one for me to pick, right? And the reason is because, first of all, you don't know the most inaccurate betting line on the card until the fight's over, right? So obviously it's just my perception of what the most inaccurate betting line on the card is. Now, I've given out quite a good few bets on this, but I'm not letting it deter me and, me trying to pick someone who I think is quote unquote a lock. I'm sticking to it and I'm just picking who I think the most inaccurate betting line on the card is or not. Look, whether they win or lose, I just think the betting line is inaccurate, whether I'm predicting them to win or lose. Last week, I gave Marcos Rogerio de Lima as a minus 170 favorite, the most inaccurate betting line on the card. In fact, me and my members bet it at minus 170. I think when I said it on the podcast, it was like minus 210. I still said it was the most inaccurate betting line on the card. I thought he should have been a minus 300 when the fight played out. Because we got to see all 15 minutes, we can take a decent amount from that fight, as opposed to if it was a flash KO. I feel like Marcos Rogerio de Lima, he looked at least minus 400, probably more to minus 500 in that fight, right? You would say he wins that fight at least 85% of the time. So minus 500 range from what we saw, especially as it was 15 minutes, right? So, a couple weeks before that, I gave Rodrigo Vargas out as a plus 200 underdog. So I'm batting a pretty decent percentage. I gave Cub Swanson out as well. He lost, but, I feel like we didn't get to see that fight play out. So, I can't shit on it that much, that bet there. So, look, we've got Andrea Lee versus Antonina Shevchenko. And that's the one I'm going for, guys. Andrea Lee is an underdog to Antonina Shevchenko, and I just don't understand why. She's a plus 100 underdog. And if you have a look on the screen now, and if you're just listening to the podcast, I'll tell you what she opened up at. Andrea Lee opened up at plus 120. In the bookies, right? Don't know what the bookies are thinking. And then she went up to plus 160. And then she was steady around plus 160 for a long, long time. And now when fight week comes, May the 10th, she drops down drastically from plus 150. Now she's plus 100, even money underdog. So that just tells you where the market lines Andrea Lee. They line Andrea Lee as a favorite. And obviously, if Shevchenko didn't open up as a favorite, if it was like a pick'em, Andrea Lee would have been steamed to favorite. She wouldn't have been steamed from minus 160 to plus 100. She probably would have been steamed from minus 110 to like minus 130, minus 140 or something, right? So, look, I'm not saying this fight is a complete blowaway. Andrea Lee's going to dominate. But the thing about this fight is that how are you making Antonina Shevchenko a favorite when her holes in the wrestling are absolutely drastic? And Lee actually averages about a takedown per 15 minutes. Lee always goes for at least one takedown in the fight. If she's fighting Antonina Shevchenko, who's terrible at wrestling defense or terrible at getting up from her back, she's probably going to spam a couple of takedowns, you would think, unless she's absolutely stupid. And then if you go to the striking, right, it's pretty even. I think Antonina Shevchenko's probably got a little bit of the edge in the striking, but this is MMA. This is not kickboxing. This is not Muay Thai anymore, right? And even if it is Muay Thai, I mean, Shevchenko is not Valentina, Her name value is not what... She's not Valentina. She's not her sister. She's not as good as her sister. She'll never be as good as her sister. She's not a great fighter, guys. She's a decent level UFC fighter, in the women's division. She's not very good at all. Her MMA striking is probably on par with Andrea Lee. I believe this fight is on the feet is virtually a 50-50. Maybe you go 55-45 Shevchenko just because of the Muay Thai pedigree. Maybe you do that. But then Andrea Lee is like 80-20 in the wrestling, I mean, if it's a pure wrestling match, Andrea Lee's dominating here, right? Now, I do think Antonina Shevchenko can actually get takedowns on Andrea Lee, which is something people who are betting Andrea and who have bet Andrea, which is a lot of people, are probably not also realizing, because Andrea Lee's not good at defending takedowns, really, and she's not great off her back either. So I do think that Antonina could actually switch the script and get takedowns. But I just feel like Andrea Lee, Andrea Lee's path in the wrestling is way more, doable than Antonina Shevchenko's path, for sure. So, yeah, I just think this lines off. I think you have to line Andrea Lee a 60% favorite. I think Andrea Lee should be minus 150. I don't understand how she's the underdog. I don't understand how she's plus money. I'm just completely confused by this. Not much more to say about this fight, guys. It's kind of rudimentary. As I said, striking's fairly even. Andrea Lee can dominate in the wrestling if she wants to. If she's not stupid, she should win this fight. One contrary take I will give, because I don't want to give everything, to Andrea Lee. I always like to talk about both sides, both fighters, even if I'm backing one to win. Because at the end of the day, right, we only get to see one iteration of a fight. So if Andrea Lee goes out there and beats Anthony Shevchenko in the first round, everyone's going to be like, wow, Andrea Lee, great bet, right? But we only saw that fight play out once. Anything can happen once. Like, you just don't know what's going to happen. If Ben Askren fights Masvidal 100 times, how many times does Masvidal knock him out in the first round? How many times does Masvidal even win that fight? I know everyone shits on Ben Askren, the worst fighter ever now, just because of where his career's gone. But look, I'm not going to go into Ben Askren's career, but he was a dominant champion in one, and he was, dominated Douglas Lima, who's it's pretty clear he's better than George Masvidal, in my opinion. Dominated Koreshkov, who's a good fighter. He's got good wins under his belt. What I'm trying to say is, if they fight 100 times, Ben Askren might win half the time, right? So everyone thinks, oh yeah, Masvidal, that was a great bet. But maybe not, maybe just what we saw made it seem like the bet was great. So I say that to say this, that I always like to give both sides of the fight, because at the end of the day, just because we see one iteration of a fight doesn't mean it was a good bet. Doesn't mean that doesn't mean it was a good bet, and doesn't mean that there was value on the line, right? If you see a fight play out over 15 minutes, 25 minutes, and you can get a clear gauge of the skill sets, then we can take more away. But for fights that end quickly and stuff like that, you can't or weird things happen. You can't take too much away from the fight. So I do feel like Antonina Shevchenko, on the other side, she can get takedowns. And I also believe that Antonina Shevchenko has shown improvement. She's fairly new to MMA as opposed to Andrea Lee. So she should be improving each time. But you say that, and we just saw how Caitlin Chikagan was able to Khabib wrestle her just 2 fights ago. And that's kind of funny to say, because Caitlin Chikagan is an out-and-out striker. She literally is not a grappler. If you go and look at UFC stats and see her takedown accuracy is 15%, right? And that's with the 3 out of 3 takedowns against Antonina Shevchenko. So before that, it was probably even less, right? So for her to look like Khabib, that was a terrible look from Antonina Shevchenko. So although she probably is getting better, new in the game, I don't feel like her grappling holes are going to be patched up. So Andrea Lee has a clear path there. I don't think Andrea Lee is like the smartest fighter in the world, because, she seems to have some questionable fight IQ at times. So, yeah, shout out to someone put a post on Twitter the other day. It was Gugabe. If you don't follow Gugabe on Twitter, he's definitely a knowledgeable guy in the MMA betting game. Go and follow him. He put out a post the other day saying that, the only reason Andrea Lee is an underdog is because, first of all, she's fighting someone with a second name, Shevchenko, right? We saw Muhammad Usman, who was Kamaru Usman's brother, the other day, get beat as a minus 400 favorite, right? So we know the second names of dominant champions. It's like when Abubakar Nurmagomedov fights in the UFC, because he's Khabib's brother, Khabib's cousin, whatever. They're always juiced, right? They're always the bookies take this into account. So Gugabe said that because her second name is Shevchenko, and because Andrea Lee has lost 2 split decisions, which she probably should have won both, that's the reason she's underdog, right? And it's kind of crazy to think that if she was fighting someone called Antonina Wright, she probably would be favorite in this fight. Or if the judges had got the decisions right against Lauren Murphy and the other girl she fought, she also probably would be a favorite. So, there's a lot you need to take into account when MMA betting, right? It's not as just meets the eye. And obviously everything is dictated by the markets. I don't give a fuck who wins the fight 1 out of 100 times. I care about what the market says and, the long-term value of the lines. So anyway, yeah, I'm going to predict Andrea Lee to win via decision. That's it. And I move on to the main event, guys. Charles Oliveira versus Michael Chandler. I'll quickly catch up with the chat before. So K Baba is saying, I don't rate Chikagan. How is she the favorite? I don't know. I'm not going to go into that fight today. Hunter's saying kind of a moot, as if you take her, you go by decision. The concern is that Lee gets taken down herself. Yes. And or a close decision in Texas. Yeah. So, yeah, could she get taken down by herself? I've already answered that. You probably sent the message before I said that. So she definitely could get taken down herself. But I think the wrestling path is more clear on the other side. And then a close decision in Texas. Yeah, definitely could be a close decision in Texas. By the end of the day, we have to bet the line, right? We can't we can't worry about decisions and stuff. Now, if you want to do that, then that's up to you. But, are you going to bet on only fighters that can get the knockout or submission? Fair enough. Let's just check. Look at that. Over 1.5 rounds, minus 700. Let's just check the Andrea Oliveira decision. Oliveira decision, plus 160, plus 170. Yeah. So that's a good bet. I think Lee's going to win this fight, and I think she's going to win by decision. So definitely a chance. Dimitri Sped is saying, I think the most offline is Soriano-Giagos fight doesn't go to decision. Gargos has a clear path to victory, but gasses. Are you talking about the submissions? This gives Soriano a chance to finish late. Yeah, but Soriano isn't got the greatest gas tank as well, So they might just be sloppy in that third round. Also, I believe you're saying Gargos has a clear path to victory with the submission, right? Because you're talking about the fight doesn't go to decision. Thing about that is he's a decision fighter. Now, I definitely feel like Soriano is liable to get submitted by anyone he fights. So, yeah, man, I agree with you. If you take a shot on... Listen, I was looking at taking a shot on that as well. So I don't hate the shot at all. Yeah, look, I still might, because at plus 150, that's a decent bet. And I've actually been playing most of the first fights of the night to not go to decision, because I feel like the UFC likes to start the card with a banger, right? So a lot of times they start the card with a fight that will probably never go to decision. We saw Gravely versus Burchek recently. That wasn't going to go to decision, was it? We saw Na Liang versus Conor Losey. That was never going to decision. I cashed the under 2.5 rounds. They had 4 units on it. So I have been betting the under 2.5 rounds. Fight doesn't go to decision in the first fight of the night. But someone else was meant to be in the first fight of the night, and that actually got cancelled, and Gargos' opponent got replaced. So I have to look at that a little bit. But at the end of the day, it's all stylistics, right? And I actually was looking at that. So if you do bet that, good luck, my man. Sumi is saying, I think Shevchenko is going to win this. Her improvement with each is showing quite good. Yeah, I do agree that she's improving. But the thing is that she's not improving her wrestling defense, right? So she could be improving everything, but it looks like she's not improving her wrestling defense, because in her last fight, she won, right? But she dominated that fight. The fight before that, it's only 2 fights ago, she got completely mollywopped by a striker in the wrestling. She made Caitlin Chukagian look like Khabib. So, thing about MMA betting is that you can't really, some people like to say, and I've had chats with some people saying that they bet on things that they haven't seen yet. They basically time improvements. You can't do that long term, guys. You might get it right, and you think you know it. You're like, oh, yeah, I knew he was going to improve, and so I bet on it and he improved. That means I can time improvements. No, it probably happened that one time, but over the long term, you should probably only bet on things you've seen. And I haven't seen that Antonina Shevchenko can defend a double leg. She can't defend a takedown, so I'm not going to bet that this time she does, if you know what I'm saying. Shout out to Cowboy Fight Picks. He's saying, MMA lock of the night, send him here. Thank you, man. Preet. Thank you, Cowboy. I hope to see you more in the chat. And I'm going to get straight onto the main event now. Before I do that, Parky is saying, you have a great understanding on how to succeed at this game. Hope the variance gods are on your side this weekend. Best of luck. Thank you, my man. I appreciate that. Same to you. All right, here we go. Main event, Charles Olives versus Michael Chandler. Charles Olives, currently a minus 125 favorite. Michael Chandler plus 100. A little bit of money has come on Michael Chandler over the last 12 hours since I've been asleep. He was plus 110. You can actually get him at minus 110 on Sports International. This is an absolute banger of a fight. I cannot wait for this fight, man. I've spoke to death about this fight on my friend Alexander's YouTube channel. If you want an in-depth breakdown of the co-main event and the main event, you can go check out his channel, which is called Conor McGregor Singleness of Purpose. We break down both fights from a betting perspective. But obviously, I'll touch on it here. I just won't talk about it for like 30, 40 minutes like I did on that channel. So check that out if you want an in-depth breakdown. But I don't know who's going to win this fight. I'm leaning to Michael Chandler, guys. I'm going to come out and say that first of all. I am leaning to Michael Chandler. Definitely scares me just because I feel like Charles is going to do it. I've got a feeling that Charles Oliveira is going to win this fight, but I've been in the game long enough to understand that feelings mean absolutely fuck all. Believe me, feelings mean nothing. There's been so many times that I've had a weird feeling that a fighter's going to win, and they go out there and win. And I'm like, wow, I was right. I had this feeling. There's been a lot of times where I have a feeling a fighter's going to win, and they don't win. But you know what happens with the human brain? You forget about them times. You only remember about them times you had a feeling and you won. So just because I have a feeling, I understand that it means zero. It means absolutely nothing. I have to lean with Chandler just because I feel like he's got the archetype to beat Charles Oliveira. He's a short, stocky wrestler who's extremely tough. He's got a good chin, although he can be hurt. He has been hurt, rocked on multiple occasions, knocked out before. He definitely can be hurt, but he does have a good chin. His recoverability is good as well. If Charles hurts him, I believe he's got a very solid heart. He'll try and continue. He won't look for a way out like some fighters do. I also feel like Chandler can dictate where the fight goes. And it might be dangerous against someone with the jiu-jitsu of Oliveira. But we saw Kevin Lee have a lot of success in the wrestling, even though he was getting hurt on bottom and he was getting in some dangerous positions. I think Chandler is a lot more defensively responsible than Kevin Lee. So I feel like if Chandler has the same game plan as Lee, which turned into a wrestling game plan after he started getting stung on the feet, I think Chandler can stay out of submissions more than Kevin Lee was able to. So he can dictate where the fight goes, which is obviously always a huge plus in MMA. If he's getting beat up on the feet, he has the ability to dictate the fight taking place on the ground. Charles Oliveira doesn't have that, in my opinion. Look, can he jump on his back in a scramble? Can he get a surprise takedown? Of course, this is MMA. It's Charles Oliveira. He's not a little girl, right? Like he can take Chandler down. I just don't think he consistently can dictate where the fight goes. So, the one punch power, the explosiveness is on Michael Chandler's side. I feel like I've just said a lot of benefits for Michael Chandler, right? And that's the reason I'm leaning to him. But I think this close is as close to a 50-50 as you can get, man. And the reason I'm saying 50 Michael Chandler maybe is just because of the odds, guys. You know what I mean? Like I said, the Shane Burgos and Edson Barbosa fight was a 50-50. The reason I'm going with Barbosa is because he's the underdog, right? And to be honest, I actually do lean Barbosa a bit, and I probably will fucking bet Barbosa, man, especially because the money's coming on him now. Maybe I'll wait another 6-7 hours to see if there's any more money coming in on him, but I think I'm going to bet Barbosa, just thinking about it now. I kind of lean Barbosa a little bit in that fight, and then... Oh, but he's a bit worried me as well. Anyway, I don't want to go back into that. I'll do my own analysis and send the bets out to my members after. But yeah, back to the Oliveira fight. So on the Oliveira side, his advantages are he's longer, he's lankier, he's got more range. He's a better striker, in my opinion. He never used to be, but his boxing is amazing now. We see him hit Kevin Lee with amazing uppercuts, hurt him badly. Kevin Lee's got a good chin. He's been hurt a couple of times, but not really. Kevin Lee doesn't really get wobbled. He got wobbled by that spinning back kick by Edson Barbosa, spinning wheel kick. And he also got wobbled badly against Charles Oliveira. Other than that, I don't really remember a time Kevin Lee was wobbled. He doesn't really get wobbled in the fights against Al Quinta, even though he lost both. So I think Oliveira has a lot of power in his hands now. He knocked out Jared Gordon out cold, so he's definitely got good power in his hands. His boxing is a lot better than Michael Chandler's, in my opinion. If there was in a straight boxing match, I'd definitely take Oliveira, unless it was for like 10 rounds, because I do favor the cardio advantage, which is another advantage Chandler has. So I think Oliveira has that range control. I feel like his striking is way more diverse. We see him throw jumping switch kicks or jumping front switch kicks to Kevin Lee. We saw him front kick Kevin Lee in the face. He's a very, very dynamic striker at this point in his game. He's obviously got the submission grappling edge as well. He can wrap up a submission whenever he wants against Michael Chandler. Whenever he wants. I'm speaking a little bit out of turn there. You know what I mean, though. I hope you know what I mean. He can at least attempt a submission whenever he wants. Charles Oliveira can get submissions standing. He can get submissions standing on your back. He can get submissions on the floor. He can get submissions in guard. He can get submission anywhere in the octagon. So that's such a dangerous fighter to fight against, because at any moment you can you can be unconscious or you can be tapping. Kind of the same thing with fighters like Ngannou. Like, he can get a knockout at any moment. So it's so dangerous fighting with him. Even if you're dominating for 3 rounds, he can probably still knock you out. Derek Lewis is a better example, right? You dominate him for 3 rounds, he knocks you out in the 3rd round. Alexander Volkav, Curtis Blade, 2nd round. So Charles Oliveira is in that same category, where Davison Figueiredo is in that same category. You're outpointing that dude. He lands one punch in your chin after being dominated for 14 minutes and you're knocked out unconscious. So these fighters have the X factor. Charles Oliveira has the X factor. Extremely dangerous to bet against someone with the X factor, right? So they're the advantages for Charles. I'll tell you another advantage for Charles, right? Is that Charles Oliveira has been dramatically improving. Even to his last fight, we saw a wrestling game, which we haven't seen from Charles consistently over 15 minutes ever before. So Charles Oliveira is still improving every single damn fight, which is a dangerous prospect if you want to bet against him, because how much is he going to improve in the next fight against Michael Chandler? He could improve dramatically. We don't know. We might see something we've never seen from Charles. He might start throwing spinning heel kicks that Chandler just can't get the range because of them, spinning back kicks. Look, we just don't know what we're going to see from Charles because the improvements have been almost every fight. Now, if you look at Michael Chandler, has he made improvements that much in the last 8 fights, 10 fights? I don't think so, guys. I feel like Michael Chandler 5 years ago is pretty much what we see of Michael Chandler today. Obviously, he's got some new tricks up his sleeve. No fighter stays exactly the damn same for 5 years at this high title shot level. But on a whole, Michael Chandler is basically the same guy as 5 years ago. Charles Oliveira is drastically different as 5 years ago. Is a huge factor in this fight, in my opinion. Absolutely huge. I really feel like that is such an underappreciated factor in this fight. The improvements that Charles made versus the improvements Chandler has not made. So, as I said, I'm leaning Chandler because I just, I won't mention all the advantages I had, but I just got a weird feeling Charles is going to improve again and win this fight, man. So, look, I'm going with Michael Chandler to win via KO in the 2nd round. But I do feel like Charles Oliveira is so fucking live. If you want to avoid the money lines, you can go for the under 2.5 rounds. I did get in on that myself. Me and my members bet that when it was like minus 140. I'm just going to have a check now to see if it's changed. Okay, it's now minus 200. So, you can listen to my podcast and I do give you out my predictions for 3 fights out of the 12. But I've actually got bets on 9 fights out of these 12 fights. So if you want all my picks, I suggest you sign up as a member because, not only will you get all my picks as opposed to a couple of predictions, but you'll also get lines like minus 140, like we got in minus 140 as opposed to minus 200, which is very good closing line value. And as many of you may know, one of the biggest and probably the best predictor to long-term success within sports betting, it's nothing to do with predicting winners. It's nothing to do with having good reads on fights or matches. It's about beating the closing line. If you're consistently beating the closing line over a year, you're going to win that year, all right? And if you do it over 10 years, you're going to earn a lot of money. So we always beat the closing line. 95% of our bets beat the closing line, which is something I'm very proud of. And that's why we win long term, right? So that's it, man. I appreciate everybody being here, everybody interacting in the chat. I will get to the chat just before I sign off. Any of you listening on a podcast app, thank you for listening. Sorry, I interacted with the chat for a little bit between there, but got to show love to everybody watching live. That's it, man. LucrativeMMABetting.com. Links in my bio to sign up. And that's it. I'll see you next week. Good luck on all your bets. And I'll be back next week for another edition of the Lucrative MMA Betting Podcast. Thanks for listening. And before I sign off, say to Sumi K, I think the Chandler, KO, TKO, and Oliveira sub-prop bets would be a good hedge play. Yep, I think that's true, bro. I don't like to get, like just me personally, sometimes I do. A lot of times I don't get, that specific with it just because, there is a chance Oliveira knocks him out on the feet. There's a chance anything happens, of course. But yeah, I agree that is probably the most likely outcomes. B Anon is saying the whole card is 50-50 fights. Yeah, for sure, man. They are. And you can tell by the odds, right? I mean, when do you see odds ranges like this? Even in MMA, it's unlikely, you know? Like the biggest favorite on the card is Gina Mazzani, and she's only minus 200, you know? It's not even that big of a favorite. There we go. That's it, guys. I'm jumping off now. Shout out to you, Parky. Thanks for interacting, and hopefully I'll see you again. All right, take care, guys.